This is how you save $10,000 when moving to Atlanta, Georgia. Because we're in a buyer's market right now, many sellers are paying for buyers' closing costs of at least $10,000, and this is how you get that $10,000. Typically, when you're buying a home here in Georgia or in any state of the US, when you are buying a home with a loan, you have closing costs. In fact, even when you're buying a home with cash or not a loan, you still are going to have closing costs. These closing costs are made up of things like the services of the lender, the services of the closing attorney, title insurance, all kinds of things make up closing costs, and all of these usually come out to somewhere between $10,000 to $20,000. But because it's a buyer's market right now, very often you can get the seller to pay for almost all of these closing costs. And the way you would do that is when you find a home that you are in love with and it's the right home and you're finally ready to make an offer on the home, you include in the offer the purchase price and the amount that you're asking the seller to pay for your closing costs. What I typically do for most of my clients is we ask for maybe $15,000 to $20,000 in closing costs, and hopefully we can negotiate that to about $10,000. Sometimes even it's $15,000, and this is a huge savings that you, the buyer, doesn't have to pay and somebody else is paying for. When you get to move-in day and closing day on the home, the closing attorney is going to have a dollar amount that you need to send in to complete the closing of the home. This is going to be for things like the down payment and then also obviously for the closing costs. But instead of you wiring that $10,000 or that $15,000 for the closing costs, the seller would be paying for that. And so that cash stays in your pocket. You don't have to pay for it. And that is a huge savings when you're making the move here to Atlanta. But keep in mind, there are many other ways to save when you're moving here to Atlanta. You can get the seller to pay for things like your interest rate, to lower your interest rate. You can get things like the lender paying for some or all of your down payment. There are also huge property tax savings here in Metro Atlanta. All of these we're going to talk about here in this video. What's up, y'all? My name is Victor with Atlanta Suburban Living. We put out videos every week about what it's like to live in Atlanta and the surrounding suburbs of Atlanta. If you're thinking about moving to Atlanta or you just have any questions about what it's like to live here, feel free to call, text, or email me anytime. Thank you so much to everybody who has reached out. I'm always happy to help. To get a better understanding of how to get these savings on your property taxes and get the seller of the home to pay to lower your interest rate and to get the lender to pay for some or all of your down payment, you really need to understand that right now we're in a buyer's market. And this has not been the case for at least a decade. We've always been in a seller's market, but because we're in a buyer's market, there are so many things you can do to save on your move to Atlanta. Essentially, what it means to be in a buyer's market is that there are more sellers of homes than there are buyers of homes. Another way to say that is that there are more people trying to sell their home, or there are more listings currently for sale on the market right now than there are people trying to buy homes. So the people who are trying to buy the homes are getting huge advantages, things like paying lower than the list price of the home, or getting some of their interests lowered by the seller. And so one of the ways that we do that is, instead of using some of that money for closing costs, when you are buying a home with a loan, you use some of that money that the seller is contributing when you're buying a home to pay the lender to lower the interest rate. Kind of sounds like a bribe, but it's not a bribe. It's actually a very legal thing that many lenders all lenders do this, and it's called paying for discount points or paying to lower your interest rate. You can call it all kinds of things, but essentially it's like an upfront cost that you are paying the lender to lower your interest rate. So instead of being in the low sixes, you could be in the high fives, and this is a huge savings for the life of the loan. Another big one that we're seeing is for lenders to help pay for the down payment. Keep in mind that currently we're seeing in Metro Atlanta that the average days on market for a listing is upwards of like 3 or 4 weeks. This is a very big difference compared to years past. Again, for maybe a decade at least, we have seen that the average listing stays on the market for just maybe 1 or 2 weeks tops. And so to see listings stay on the market for so long, this means that there are far less buyers. We're also seeing that the average sold price of a home is not increasing like a crazy amount year after year. It's much more stable. In fact, I'd say in the last 6 months or so, we're seeing home prices just kind of level out, and sellers are listing their home for one price and buyers are getting that home for far less. This has become the norm here in Metro Atlanta, and so there are all kinds of ways to save on buying a home. And one of those other ways that you can save is by getting the lender to pay for some of that down payment. So many lenders have something called down payment assistance, and you need to kind of qualify for this. It's based on your income and credit score, maybe all kinds of different factors based on different lenders. But this is a super normal thing that lenders are doing now because they're trying to get your business. They're trying to find buyers who are interested in buying homes. And so they're offering programs like down payment assistance for you to be their customer. So all you got to do is when you are applying for a loan is ask that lender, no matter what lender it is, if they have down payment assistance. Chances are if you ask 2 or 3, you're going to find one that is offering down payment assistance. Another big one that many people are getting, including many of my clients, is home warranty. So when you move into the home and instead of you having to like fix things right away with the home, like let's say you move in and 6 months later, you've got like an electrical problem or a plumbing problem or the HVAC stops working, whatever it might be, we have now many sellers who are paying for home warranties for a year. So you don't have to take care of these things if anything goes wrong with the home in the first year of you living there. And this is a huge peace of mind that you don't have to worry about, like if there's something wrong with the plumbing, like in the first few months of you living there, the home warranty company takes care of these things. And this is just so beneficial. It's so nice to be able to do that now for many buyers. Again, in decades past, this was definitely not a thing. Sellers were not paying for these home warranties, but it is now super common. And then another big one is property taxes. Here in Metro Atlanta, there are many counties that now offer a big discount to seniors on their property taxes. So instead of paying for the school portion of property taxes, they no longer have to pay that once you reach a certain age. And the school portion of the property taxes makes up like half of the property taxes. And here in Georgia, you're looking at about 1.1 to 1.2% of the value of the home for property taxes. So for a typical $500,000 home, you're looking at about $5,500 for the year. But if you're above that age where you no longer have to pay for the school portion of taxes, your property taxes go down to $2,500 per year or less. This is obviously a huge savings for seniors who live in Metro Atlanta, and absolutely something that you really need to take in mind when you're moving here. Of course, one of the biggest factors for whether or not you move here has to do with the cost of living in Atlanta. And while many people would say that the cost of living here in Atlanta is so low and everything is so cheap, like it's not really that cheap. If you're coming from an area of the country where it's like a small town and everything is super inexpensive, then of course a big city like Metro Atlanta is going to be a bit more expensive. But if you're coming from a part of the United States where the cost of living is super high, like you're coming from maybe another big city, then the cost of living here in Atlanta may be a bit lower than that. So it's really important to determine how much you're going to be paying, like monthly, if you're living here in Metro Atlanta. So I've made an entire video outlining the monthly costs of living here in Metro Atlanta. You can check it out right here. I'll see you in the next one.